Hello, I'm Rick Wilson, a support engineer and subject matter expert for automation document processing, a component of IBM Cloud Pak for business automation. I periodically receive questions from automation document processing designers as to why an incorrect KVP value is being returned for a particular test document. This recording will show you how automation document processing determined that value, and from that, you'll better be able to determine how you can improve the model to provide better results. This presentation assumes that you are familiar with the concepts of automation document processing and how to train a model. So to start with, what we have on the screen is the content designer screen as a starting point. Now I've done a couple things to start out the recording before I started it, and I should point out that I am working off of a Technote. Technote is available on our support site, Understanding Key Value Pairs Results with Automation Document Processing. What I have done for starters, I have added a little extra to the command line, and this is going to give me some enhanced functionality which you will see in the demonstration. So going back to Content Designer, what I have done is in the extraction model, test model section, I have uploaded two invoices. And let's see what we got for results. You'll notice the APT002 actually says I only found 50% of the fields. That's not good. So let's see what happened here. I bring up APT002, and we're going to use the invoice number for this presentation to see what's going on. So I'm going to scroll down and find the invoice number field, and you'll notice it says 95th Street. That's pretty weird. I'm going to click on it though and highlight it. And you'll notice that if you look at the document itself, it is showing us that 95th Street is the value that it found. Why did it find that value? You may notice I actually have an invoice number over here on the right, but it found this instead. So I'm going to show you why it found that. The way to do that, I'm going to temporarily close this, and I'm going to open up my browser console, because that's going to show me some additional information. Now I'm going to bring this document back up again, and you will find that if I go to the JSON content section here, response, I get a JSON file that I'm going to copy the whole thing. You can't see it all right now in my presentation, so let's go ahead and put it into Notepad. And what we're going to do is I'm going to search for that invoice number. Now within this file, I should make it clear that the system uses the symbolic name, not the display name. I happen to know that the symbolic name is invoice number, just without the space. And let's go ahead and see what we can find. I'm going to find all the events in this document. And you see from the search that we actually found two occurrences of it. And in this case, there may be more, but we just found two occurrences. I'm going to click on the second line first. And this is actually a summary section. It actually does not give a lot of detail since it only found one instance. It's basically saying I only found the invoice number one way, and I have 42% confidence that that's it. So most of the good information is actually going to be on the other line. I'm going to click on it. And if you take a look at it here, you can see that, yes, it says I found the key was invoice, and that's what I used as my guide. And the value I found for that is 95th Street. So if I scroll down just a little bit, I look at this field here, Reserve 2. Now, they never gave it a name, which would have been nice, but Reserve 2 is a very important field here because that number tells me how it found that value, how it determined that value. There's a number of different ways that ADP approaches trying to find it. It looks at the document up, down, sideways, and then it looks at where it found the best hits. In this case, it only found one really good hit, and that was with 1. What is 1? Well, I'm going to save you the trouble going back to that reference document, but there is a chart down at the bottom that will tell you that 1 is heuristics. And heuristics means that basically it tried to logic it out with the basic information that it was told about the key invoice number. So there's a number of different things you can tell it for a key to give it some idea of what it might need to look for. So let's go back to that document. And I'm going to go back and look at it more directly again. And if you take a look at this document, you can see that one of the things that it's been told to look for an invoice number is the word invoice. And the invoice actually appears twice on this, but in nice big large letters it says invoice. It would probably first grab any text that might be immediately below or immediately to the right, because that's logical. In this case, there wasn't any. In fact, going the 4 directions, the one thing it did find was 95th Street off to the left. And so it grabbed that value. Now, that still seems like not a very good hit here. Why did it not know to grab the invoice number over here? Well, we're going to go back to our JSON file here, and we're going to look for another field. It's going to be up at the top of the field, and we're going to look for this KVP ML model. Now, we train the model very heavily by using training documents, and this is a key to telling us what training document it used. But in this case, it came back null. And what that means is there was no training document that was anywhere near looking like this one. So it decided it simply couldn't use the training documents it had to determine any of the values. So it basically tried to rough it out and just use heuristics on everything. Now, quite frankly, heuristics, I'm pretty amazed how well it actually does given no training. But needless to say, if you really want to have a lot of accurate results, you're going to want to have training documents that help ADP provide accurate results. And that also suggests the solution here. If I want to get accurate results out of this type of invoice, I need to have some training documents that are look similar to that at least. And once I add that in and I retrain the model, when I run this document through, it'll be able to find those training documents and it'll get the extra help it needs to find the invoice number. Now that we've done that, we have a second document and it has a separate issue. So I'm going to step you through that one here. Let's close this. And I've got this Nelson Brothers PDF. Let's see how it did with the invoice number. Okay, and we're going to scroll down. And here's invoice number, select it, and a little small on your screen possibly, but you can see that it actually found what is the customer ID number, not the invoice number 2 up from it. Again, we have a miss. And how did that happen? Because it says invoice number, it's got the number right to the right of it. What was it thinking? Okay, let's go through the same process and track that down. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to close this. I'm going to open my console. I'm going to rerun the document with the console open so I can grab this line here and get my response. And paste it into here. Let's get a new screen up here. Okay, perfect. And again, I am going to search on invoice number. Let's find all the occurrences in here. Okay, I've got 3. So let's see what we've got here. Starting with the last one. I have, you can tell me that in this case, invoice number had found 2 different hits, which we know because we've got extra we've got an extra line here. We've got actually 2 lines up in the upper part of this JSON file. One of them it gave 60%, one of them gave 46%. Now, if I had to, I could use this. I am going to have to match this line up with the upper part to know which is which, but ultimately it's going to be pretty obvious here. But this is what all the lower part says. It says I found two, and this is the one that was most confident. Okay, let's go look at those two at the top. And again, we're going to look at the same thing. In this one, I see invoice, and I see 209,456. And if you remember while I was displaying that document, that actually is the correct value. And so it came back and says, well, I think it's 209,456. How did it find it? Well, heuristics. There's the reserved to field is 1. So in this case, it found the word invoice, and it found a number right near it, and that was the correct way to search for it. So it actually found the correct value that way. But wait, we had found two different methods also found a hit. So let's look at the second one here. In this one, it found the key invoice number, but then it found the value 13925, which is wrong. How did it do that? Well, if I look at the reserved to field, I have a 6. This is probably the most common number you're going to get. And checking with my reference document, I see that 6 means I used a training document to figure out the location. And we don't need to do any further analysis here to know that when it found it these two different ways, it decided the training document must be right, and which oddly enough, it wasn't here. So let's figure out, okay, if it used a training document, let's trace this back to the training document. And what we do is I'm going to scroll to the top. I'm going to find KVPML model right there, and I have a number. I'm going to copy that number. Now, here's the catch. You may say, well, what document is this? Because I don't have any documents with this name. Well, we need to go through and translate that, and that's done as follows. I'm going to go back to here. I'm going to temporarily close this so you can see how I'm navigating. I'm going to close my document here, and I'm going to go back to the main Content Designer page. Okay, so this is the starting point. I'm going to hit F12, open that up, and I'm going to click on Document Types and Samples. And I get this line, Files with Extraction Stats. Okay, and if I select it, I grab the response. Now, actually, I'm not going to grab it this time because I already have it on file here. But this response lists every training document I've got. In fact, every document I've got in every document class. So I've already copied it in my clipboard, so I'm going to jump back to here. Here is that document. And I'm going to search on that number I found. It comes back and tells me, okay, it says, I think this document matches your training document called INV 028-111. Okay, now I have a name and we're in business. Let's go back to here. I'm going to close this again so you can see the navigation. And in this case, what we need to do, we need to get out of document types. We need to go back to the extraction model. And within the extraction model, this time I want to go to the Teach Model tab. This is where we train all the individual documents. And all I need to do now is locate that. So I go into Invoice, and I'm going to find out it's on page 2. So we'll go to page 2, and there's Invoice 028-111. Let's bring it up. So how did I train the invoice number? Let's take a look at that. And I scroll down, I find invoice number, and I highlight it. And look at this. Apparently, there's a mistake made on this one. Now, admittedly, not all errors are going to be this obvious. You may have just alignment errors with where the zone is defined and other more subtle things. But in this case, there's just an outright mistake. Accidentally, when training this document, I told it the value was the customer ID value, not the invoice number. And so there's the reason we got the wrong value. And again, the solution is readily provided to us, because all we have to do now is just do a real quick change and redefine the zone for the invoice number value as being a rectangle around 209,456. We rerun the training, and we should find that we're getting correct results. Now I've got just something else real quick I want to show you. One of the nice things when you added that extra line in the URL, it opened up some debugging capability. So what I'm going to go back is to my test model. Probably should have shown this at the beginning. Let's go to Nelson Brothers here. And because I did that, there's a little blue line on the left side of the document. And if I slide that document across, what it's showing me is what the OCR extracted. And this is really important, because if you're looking at the document, you may say, well, I see the word invoice. What's the problem here? But it doesn't necessarily get every letter and every word. And sometimes it's strictly an OCR issue. And this is how you find out. So by moving it over, for example, Nelson Brothers is in really big letters. It's not a commonly recognized font because of the thin lines. And you can see that it's actually made a couple of mistakes trying to read Nelson Brothers. So we didn't need it for any of the KVPs here, but it's good to know about this blue line that's available when you do this troubleshooting. The last thing I'm going to leave you with is that we do get people, when they're trying to go through this process, that go to the Review Training Results tab. After training a model, you get results here, but it's important to understand that this section is used for a number of different things, and when you're looking at KVP results, you're not always seeing the KVP results from the most recently trained model, and that can be misleading. So anytime you're testing documents, doing what I'm showing you here, you want to use the Test Model section. And with that, that completes this training. Thank you for watching this KVP troubleshooting video. Following the procedures explained here, you should be better able to understand and improve KVP detection with your automation document processing training model. Thank you.